Dr. Will Miller. I'm the Executive Director of Institutional Analytics, Effectiveness and Planning at Flagler. I teach political science, and I'm also a subcontractor for the U.S. State Department. The state of Florida is interesting when it comes to privacy because it's one of the few states that have an explicit provision in the state constitution. Article 1, Section 23 of the Florida Constitution makes a very clear defense of citizen liberty and citizen privacy rights from any outside actor, whether it's commercial, governmental, or otherwise. I think there's a lot of times where the average American citizen wasn't thinking about privacy because prior to drones, the fear was the police are going to come knock on my door without a warrant and enter my home. The police don't need to enter your home now. You have local police departments in some U.S. cities using drones for the technological capabilities they present to be able to monitor. A drone can stand at 10,000 feet and overhear this conversation if it really wants to, and it has the technological capabilities. So I think it's really, for a segment of the citizenry, it's really raised questions about government overstepping its legal bounds. Americans have kind of this concerned view that there are drones flying overhead capturing all of our conversations. So it's really, led to an attack on privacy laws that were written and intended without the idea of drone technology being present. When these are written, especially the ones that were written in the 1980s, there was no idea that we were eventually going to have unmanned aircraft flying at 30,000 feet that were capable of firing a rifle, listening to a conversation, doing all of the types of things we do with drones. So it's just really forced a new body of case law to begin existing that didn't previously. When we look at the use of drones in law, there are definite questions that the intrusion doctrine doesn't really address. It has to be the intentional invasion of privacy to show intrusion. It needs to be offensive to a reasonable person. It has to be a private conversation, and it has to have some element of mental anguish. At the state level, if you look at the state of Florida, Wolfson and Lewis have shown case-wise and case law that we're pretty much applying the same federal standards. So I don't think that we need to necessarily redefine intrusion as much as contextualize how the intrusion doctrine as it exists today would apply to the use of drones for monitoring, which again is something that's going to go through the court. You're looking at that battle between privacy and terrorism. It's literally kind of, for most citizens, the question of, do I want them to listen to my cell phone, or do I want to risk my airplane blowing up? The guys that are flying out of Creech and Nellis in Nevada are going to be treated differently than an individual who takes a $25 drone they bought off Amazon and decides, I want to fly it over the Castillo at 4 o'clock in the morning and scare the crap out of citizens in local communities. So I think the federal government's right in looking at the individual hobbyist citizen and holding them to a different standard in what they're doing. And again, you have the general privacy rights. You think about peeping toms. That seems like a ridiculous comparison, but the idea now of I don't have to be in the bushes stalking somebody. I can just fly this little device right outside their window and see whatever I choose. And most hobbyist drones are quiet enough that you can get away with doing that. I think the FAA is absolutely correct in looking at drones as their own separate craft. And the main reason for that is the way they're controlled. If you look at commercial planes, if you look at other types of aerial vehicles, they're controlled by individuals in that vehicle that have been specially trained. When it comes to drones, it's literally anybody could get online right now, buy a drone, have it here tomorrow, and then start flying it as high as it will possibly go. I do think in the future you'll see these merge a little bit more. Right now it's just such a new and novel thing, and for the FAA they're not used to change. So I think for the FAA they need to pay special attention to it while they learn what are people going to do with them, how are they going to use them, what risks do they actually pose, how does that operate. I think the future of drones and law in the United States is going to be extremely interesting. You've seen city police departments, City of Houston started using drones, citizen backlash, citizen anger. They don't like the idea of this thing in the sky seeing what they're doing. It's very 1984, it's very Orwellian, it's very concerning. At the end of the day, it's something where the average American doesn't necessarily understand what they're being used for because the government doesn't tell them. And I think the average American doesn't like the unknown. And this is very much the unknown. We're seeing new laws and new regulations regularly that are coming out about drones. As long as we're okay with drones on the whole, we'll keep seeing advancements. But if we ever reach a point where we're not seeing that, you're going to see the law books change probably relatively quickly.